My name is Amy Snyder, and I'm 27 years old. I live with my dad and my mom. We've always lived together as a family of three. Ever since I was little, I've always looked up to my dad. He runs his own business, and it's always so busy. He's rarely home, but whenever he finds some spare time, he always comes back to see me. On his days off, he would spend most of his time with me. He's a great dad. My mom, on the other hand, is a different story altogether. As far as I can remember, I've never seen my mom work a day in her life. She takes care of things around the house, but she's never supported my dad's business, nor has she ever held a job outside the house. Sure, I knew we were well off, seeing as my mom spent most of her time dolled up and going out. But seeing her always on the go, I knew deep down I never wanted to turn out like her. She's never been fond of kids, and she hardly ever paid me any attention. There were times when I felt terribly lonely, but my dad was always there to fill that void. I think my dad knew how indifferent my mom was towards me. He made it his mission to never let me feel left out or alone. At least, that's what I believe. I'm home, Mom! Oh, is it that late already? Mom's going out, so eat some snacks and look after the house, okay? Didn't we promise to go shopping together today? And make curry? Sorry. Something came up suddenly. We'll do that next time, okay? Okay. As a child, my mother broke promises like these with ease, no matter how many times we made them. At first, such things often brought me to tears, but as a child, I had to learn not to take promises with my mother as real promises. My father, on the other hand, was someone who would never make vague promises like, maybe, if I can, or I'll see. Over time, I came to love my father, or rather, to see him as a reliable and trustworthy person. That's how I started to think. I admired him and even begged to join his company after graduating from university. Of course, being an only child, I started thinking that I wanted to inherit the company someday and carry on the will of my father, whom I admired. After I turned 20, my father started taking me out for drinks, and I learned a lot from him. My mother was shallowly involved in raising me as I became an adult. The only time my mother intervened in my affairs was during my sophomore year of college. Dad, I want to work at your company after I graduate from school. I've already started studying for it. I even want to succeed you someday. Amy, are you sure? Wait a minute. A girl doesn't need to do that. Why not? I want to be someone who can work hard like Dad. A woman should find a good man and let her husband earn a good living. That was such a typical thing for my mother to say. I didn't think this person could understand anything I said. So, I didn't continue the conversation that day. I didn't want to live a life hanging on someone else's life like my mother. I had always strived to become a strong woman who would live on her own. For the rest of my college days, after that day, I studied hard. And I joined my father's company as soon as I graduated. I couldn't persuade my mother, but it seemed like she finally gave up in the end. If you want to live your life this way, that's fine with me, but you'll be the one who will have to suffer for not listening to your mother. If you are okay with that, then do as you please, she said. So I did as she told me. By joining my father's company in this way, the distance between my mother and me grew even deeper. On the other hand, I started spending more time with my father than before, and our bond got even stronger. Looking back now, I guess my mother wasn't too happy with this situation. When I joined my father's company, he put in a lot of effort to train me seriously. But there was a reason for that. My father was sick. It took him about half a year to introduce me to a lot of people and teach me about the job. And then, my father collapsed at our workplace. He was immediately taken to the hospital by ambulance. And for the next 5 years, he lived a life fighting his disease. Amy, how's the company doing? Is it running smoothly without your dad? It's really hard right now, but everyone is supporting me. I'm sure it will be fine because Dad trusted me with everything I need. Well, as long as that's the case, if you, a woman, take over as the second generation and cause the company to go bankrupt, it would be a real shame, so be prepared for that. Mom, you really don't have any interest or love for the company. You're only concerned about others' judgment. It's sad to hear you say that. When my father first collapsed, I often argued with my mom like this. My father would come to the company on his good days while going in and out of the hospital, gradually weakening over 5 years, and for the last year, he was almost bedridden. During the time when my father was still able to move, the last time he visited the company, he said this: "This company and its employees are very precious treasures to me, but I have to let go of my treasure. Dad, over the past few years, I've watched you work, Amy, and I think I can trust you with it. Can I ask you, please, protect this place. Protect everyone here, for me. I don't know if I can be like you, Dad, but I'll keep trying to get closer to you, who I've always admired, so you can rest easy." From that day on, the title of representative was passed on to me. I had been so busy that I barely had time to go home. Since my father was mostly in the hospital, I made time to go see him frequently. My mother did the bare minimum, like bringing him changes of clothes, but as far as I could see, she even seemed to find that bothersome. What does my mother think of my father? Does she not have any feelings or gratitude for him? Or any feelings of pity for a sick person? I couldn't help but feel sorry for my father. I recalled how hard he had worked for me when I was young. A child unable to feel my mother's love. No matter how exhausted I was, I made it a point to visit him as much as possible. This routine lasted for about a year until he passed away peacefully in his sleep. I was so swamped with various tasks that I barely had time to grieve. My mother, who knew nothing, insisted that I handle everything, from the funeral arrangements to the hospital paperwork. Realistically, I didn't expect my mother, who had never done anything but stay home and play, to handle all of these procedures. So, I silently took care of everything. "Amy, the funeral's over. You've settled down now, haven't you?" My mother broached the subject the day after the funeral. "Please, leave this house. I've just inherited 200 million yen, so I have no use for you anymore." "Thank you. I was waiting for you to say that." I had concluded that talking to her any further was pointless. Did she think it was okay to just have money and live a life of leisure? I had nothing but questions, but I decided to leave. The next day, I called the service and sold all my belongings related to me. My mother was utterly surprised at how quickly I had organized my departure. However, I had kept a secret from her. I didn't know why she claimed to have inherited 200 million yen, but my father had entrusted all the money matters to me, and I was the rightful inheritor. There wasn't a single penny left for my mother. My father had firmly requested this when he was still healthy. "Your mother doesn't understand anything about money management or spending. I want you to give her household expenses on a monthly basis. If she gets a large sum, she'll likely go bankrupt immediately. But I don't think she'll listen to me. If she complains, tell her you won't give her a single penny." "No way!" "Just kidding. But if you have trouble dealing with her, give her this." My father handed me an SD card. He said it contained a video letter from him to my mother. I never imagined that I would show her this, but judging from her recent attitude, I thought the day would come soon. My mother, alone in the spacious house after I left. I was expecting her to contact me soon, but she did so faster than I anticipated. "Come home, immediately." "Huh? What are you talking about? I'm working." "I just need to talk to you. Please, come quickly." She's so self-centered. With that thought, I headed to my childhood home with the SD card. As soon as my mother saw me, she started accusing me. "You ran off with all of your father's inheritance, didn't you? I knew something was off since you left right away. Hand over your father's inheritance to me, now." How greedy can you be? You can't even act right as a mother. Who do you think you're talking to? I quietly handed her the SD card. "What's this?" "Oh, I guess you don't even know how to watch this." Mocking her, I took out my laptop, inserted the SD card, and played the video. On the screen was my father, as healthy as he used to be. I wonder how my mother will react to this video letter. I left the room in silence. I had never seen my mother defy my father before. But how about now? After his death? Would my father's thoughts reach my mother? When I returned to the room, my mother, who had finished watching everything, was crying. I couldn't believe it. My mother was crying while watching a video of my deceased father. I was curious about the video my father left for my mother, but I didn't dare to watch it myself. So I had no idea why my mother was crying. "Mom, are you okay?" Yes, for now. I get it. I will follow your father's instructions and leave everything to you from now on. Please go home for today. Call me again when you've cooled down." I thought she probably didn't want me to see her in a vulnerable state, so I went home right away that day. How did my father silence my mother? I was full of questions. Almost a month went by without hearing from my mother. I started to worry and decided to visit my parents' house during my lunch break, but my mother wasn't home. That night, I went to see my mother again. The lights were on at the house, which relieved me. "I'm sorry for dropping in suddenly. I came by this afternoon, but you weren't home, so I got worried." "I'm sorry. I was out for my part-time job during the day." "What? A part-time job?" My mother, as far as I knew, was a person who would absolutely not work. Why did it come to this? "Didn't you watch that video?" "That was a video letter addressed to you, so I didn't watch it." "You can take it home. You should watch it too, Amy." "Can I watch it?" My mother handed over the SD card to me, saying, "Well then." I felt a bit frightened to learn what my father conveyed, observing my mother's unusual demeanor. I went back to the office and sat down at the desk my father used. Then, I played the video. "Honey, if you're watching this, it means you've not been able to communicate with Amy. First of all, thank you so much for helping me raise Amy until now. Without you, I don't think I could have managed the company while bringing up Amy." I felt something was off about the way my father was speaking. The next moment, my father said something shocking. "You've taken care of Amy, even though she's not your child, and I have nothing but gratitude for you, who stood by my side for so many years. But, as a result, you've given up on your dreams and have reached your age without earning your own living, for which I take responsibility because I've allowed you to live a life of luxury. I'm sure you'll be in trouble when I'm gone." "I'm not my mother's child?" I was so surprised that I blurted it out. But then, it made sense. Even though I didn't feel much love, she had been taking care of me by cooking for me every day and doing the bare minimum for a child who wasn't her own. Who is that person? "I didn't register our marriage because you told me you felt bad for your sister, so I ended up supporting your living and didn't do anything else. I'm sorry. But once I'm gone, I worry about the rest of your life. There's no one to support you, and I've taken your life away." I couldn't believe what my father, who spoke so fluently, was saying. It was all news to me. My father kept talking about what had happened in the past and what he hopes for our future. I spent the whole night processing all this and went back to my mother the next day. "Mom, I watched the video from Dad yesterday. You know it all now. I raised you because I was asked to. That's all." "What happened to my biological mother?" You are the child of my sister and your father. My sister died right after giving birth to you, and I told your distressed father that I would help raise Amy. I would become your mother." After hearing the story from my mother, I understood everything, even the parts I had imagined. My mother used to work in a diner, and my father used to go there to eat sometimes. My mother was lively and hardworking at that time, and her dream was to have her own diner. However, when she decided to become my mother, she gave up on that dream. After being reminded about her dream from my father, my mother decided to work for it again, and is now training as a part-timer to make that dream come true. I should have done this earlier. Working is fun and suits me. I had no idea. So, it's my fault you didn't work. I'm really sorry for not knowing anything. It's not your fault, Amy. I made the decision myself, but I'm not good with children, so I couldn't handle you well. And I'm the one who caused you trouble. I never thought the day would come when I could have a conversation with my mother like this. At this stage in my life, I finally feel like I've come to understand my mother a bit. We've had many conversations since then, and we decided to use the money left by my father to fund the opening of her shop. Once she started working, she became somewhat humble. She was hesitant when the topic of funds for the shop came up, which would have been unimaginable not too long ago. While maintaining my regular job, I also helped with the opening of her diner, which led to me seeing my mother frequently. I attribute this newly forged relationship to my father. Regarding living expenses, she insisted on managing with her own income, not wanting to accept help from my father's inheritance. Promise me that you'll tell me if you're struggling. After all, Dad trusted me to take care of you. I'll be fine living on my own. It doesn't cost that much, but in terms of my diner's expenses, I'll be relying on you. Of course. I'm looking forward to it too, so do your best. After many years, we finally became a real family, and now we are living harmoniously. She is not my birth mother, and it might have just been the right time for me to learn this. Your diner's finally gonna open tomorrow. Your dream is coming true. Seeing you work so hard at that company reminded me of my own dreams when I was younger. I believe that's why I've made it this far. It's all thanks to you and your father. Thank you so much. Mom, promise me to always be my mom. Amy. From now on, let's get along even better than before. After all, we only have each other. That's true. Upon my father's death, the truth was revealed. I accepted the reality and decided to live on with just my mother and I. As I observed my mother's lifestyle, I thought about moving back to my hometown and living together with her again. I don't cook, so my mother is concerned of my poor diet and is supportive of me coming back. My father would probably be surprised that we're getting along so well. His house, company, and inheritance that he left behind. I'll protect them at all cost while continuing to get along with my mother. In order to become a real family, we visited the graves of my father and my biological mother, my mother's older sister, to give our daily life updates. After going through the process of adoption, I finally became registered as the daughter of my mother.